Donald Trump's day in court, criminally charged and pushing back. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington with a look at what happened and what lies ahead.
The indictment against former President Donald Trump has been unsealed. I'm Arraigned in Washington, and coming up, a look at the legal path forward.
Also tonight at 5, Sioux City's assessors planning a public meeting to address newly released home values. We'll have details on that and more next on Siouxland News at 5.
Siouxland News starts right now with breaking news.
He's gone from individual one as an unindicted co-conspirator to making history as the first former president of the United States to appear in a courtroom as a criminal defendant. Donald Trump appearing for the arraignment this afternoon in Manhattan in a courtroom there, entering not guilty pleas to nearly 36 criminal charges. Thanks for joining us. I'm Larry Wentz, and tonight that arraignment of Donald Trump is first at 5. We have team coverage of the Trump arraignment from Sinclair correspondent Scott Thuman and Arraigned. Atra will have more on the indictment itself coming up, but we start with Scott, who has a breakdown of today's events in Lower Manhattan.
In an image Donald Trump tried to avoid for years, the former president was in court, facing a judge and criminal charges. A solemn arrival for Trump as he surrendered to authorities, was fingerprinted and processed.
Wake up, America!
As outside opposing crowds took turns trying to outshout each other, we also heard for the first time from District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who in his campaign boasted of having gone after Trump in the past and is accused by Trump supporters of having a political agenda and vendetta against the former president.
These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct.
Now public, the indictment includes a list of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, all stemming from Trump's alleged hush money payments around the 2016 election to hide multiple affairs. While Trump pleaded not guilty to charges that could land him years in prison, his legal team made it clear a move to dismiss the case is next, blending into the politics of it all. Conservatives insist this is an attempt by Democrats to prevent Trump from a possible return to the White House, and Trump, no doubt, will attempt to turn his arrest into a rallying point. Surrogates and detractors also caught up in the drama.
President Trump is joining some of the most incredible people in history being arrested today. Nelson Mandela was arrested, served time in prison. Jesus was arrested and murdered.
Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to take her back to Washington. You don't need to be in New York City talking that nonsense. Go back to your district.
For Trump's part, he and his supporters are trying to make Alvin Bragg the focus here, saying someone in his office leaked information about the indictment last week and that's the real crime here. The judge advising Trump and really all parties involved here to tamp down the rhetoric, avoid any sort of calls for violence. Trump calling the entire event surreal. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
Former President Trump is pleading not guilty to 34 felony charges. They stem from an investigation into a hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Sinclair national correspondent Arraigned has more on that from Washington.
During a lengthy arraignment from a Manhattan courtroom, former President Donald Trump beginning his legal battle in a case brought by District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who's charging Trump with 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. The prosecution says, quote, the defendant Donald J. Trump repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from the voting public during the 2016 presidential election. Even before learning what the charges are, Trump's attorney Joe Tacopina laid out their plan of action.
Motions that will be filed are motions to dismiss this case based on selective prosecution, prosecutorial misconduct, and things of that nature. Any motion that can be filed in this case to support our position that this case doesn't belong in a courtroom will be filed.
Concerned about Trump's social media posts they say are threatening, the prosecution is seeking a protective order for witnesses. This process will be a long one. The next court date we're learning is December 4th. In Washington, I'm Arraigned.
Now, the judge overseeing the criminal case has warned the former president not to make social media posts that could trigger unrest. This comes after he was formally charged with those 34 felonies in relationship to the hush payments. The former president has previously made incendiary posts on his Truth Social page, attacking the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and the judge. Again, Mr. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all of those charges. Now, Donald Trump's long day in New York now over. The president on his way back to Florida after his arraignment this afternoon. Trump says he'll address the media tonight at 7:15 Central Time from his Mar-a-Lago estate. We'll have more on that coming up tonight on Siouxland News at 10. Now, the White House is once again sidestepping questions on the indictment. The Biden administration has so far declined to give a reaction to the developments. Reporters today pressing the press secretary for an explanation on why the White House will not comment.
When it comes to these types of cases, these criminal, specific cases, we're just not going to comment. I know there's a broad. I get you. I know there's a broader question of what this means, the precedent, and what the president is going to decide or make decisions that he might make, like hypothetical questions. I'm just not going to comment from here on that.
The press secretary notes that President Biden was not given a heads up on Trump's indictment and found out about it through news reports. She says Mr. Biden will likely catch up on today's developments when he has a moment to go over the news of the day. Well, here in Siouxland, Chief Meteorologist Kat Taylor says some parts of the area are still at risk for severe weather this afternoon. She joins us now from the Siouxland Weather Center with the very latest on that. Kat?
Well, good news, Larry. I'm really thinking that our severe weather threat is just to the east of us by about a county. If you take a look at satellite and radar, we have snow to the north and west of us, and we are now starting to see storms developing just to our east, just west of the Des Moines area. And you can see those thunderstorms developing, rolling into Ames here shortly with some large hail, but that could be the beginning of a tornado outbreak for eastern Iowa. Generally, though, I'm thinking our area is going to stay fairly safe and quiet. We do have lots of fog in the area, though. Tatonka Golf Club, you can see in resort camera showing that we have that hazy fog. The cold front has now just arrived in Sioux City. We've dropped from 50 to 44 in the last hour and in the 30s from Yankton to Canton. And we are going to continue to watch those temperatures drop off as we have a low pressure system centered right over Sioux City right now. That cold front will pull in the colder air through the hours tonight, and we will see a much colder night ahead as well as a colder day tomorrow. I'll tell you how cold coming up.
A Stanton County, Nebraska teen will spend at least 30 years in prison for a sexual assault last year. 17-year-old Gabriel Safdie of rural Lee, Nebraska, was convicted of first-degree sexual assault, false imprisonment, and terroristic threats after breaking into a woman's home, assaulting her with a fake gun, and tying her up with a cloth belt. He later stole her SUV and led police on a chase into Cumming County, where he was arrested and confessed to the sexual assault. He's been sentenced to between 34 and 46 years in prison. He'll also be required to register as a lifetime sex offender upon his release. A Sioux City teen will spend the next 3 years in a federal prison on gun charges. 19-year-old Jolande Hills received that sentence after pleading guilty in U.S. District Court to one count of being a felon in possession of a firearm. As part of that plea, he admitted to firing a gun into a car with a woman and 2 children. That happened back in September of 2021 while under the influence of illegal drugs, and is shooting a woman in the leg in April of 2022 in an apartment on Gibson Street. Now, after completing his 3-year prison sentence, Hills will have to complete 2 years of supervised release. A Spencer man is facing felony charges tonight after an arrest for violating probation turned into a struggle with officers. 32-year-old Daniel Douglas initially ran from police in Spencer. They tried to arrest him on a warrant for probation violations Monday morning. Spencer police say when officers caught up to him, he continued to resist arrest, leading to one officer trying to use a taser on Douglas, but he was able to take the weapon from the officer. He was eventually subdued and brought to the Clay County Jail on that initial warrant, as well as charges of disarming a peace officer and interference with official acts. Sioux City's assessor is planning a public meeting this week to give homeowners more information on the new home values that were sent out last month. That meeting will be this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the Sioux City Public Museum. Assessor Tyler Erickson says the topics will include the role of his office, how market value of a home is defined, and the difference between a home's assessed value and its taxable value. Homeowners can now request informal reviews of their assessment and do so until April 25th, or appeal that valuation to a local board of review until April 30th. A detour between Dakota Dunes and North Sioux City will be in place for a little while longer. The construction company in charge of the rebuilding of the Sioux Point Road says due to conflicts with third-party utility companies and unseasonably cold weather, that project will not be completed on schedule. The completion date still up in the air, though. That project began March 5th and was initially expected to take 30 working days to complete. The contractor says they are working with all parties involved to complete that project as soon as possible. A discount realtor is expanding its operations in Sioux City, this time with a store on the west side. Five Below opened its first store in the Lakeport Commons Shopping Center in March of 2019. It offers a range of products for younger people priced at or below $5. Now the company is adding a second store in Sioux City in the Marketplace Shopping Center next to Planet Fitness. The company tells Siouxland News the tentative opening date for that new store is July 28th. Coming up in 5 minutes tonight at 5, the Iowa DNR and a local animal rescue group, they team up to remove an unexpected guest from a local hotel. But first, Iowa lawmakers want to make it harder for minors to use social media in the state. More on their arguments as well as reaction from Iowans to that proposal when Siouxland News at 5 returns.